Next, let's look at the question. It talks about plants that can survive extreme dehydration in a dormant state and start growing again when water becomes available. These plants are adapted to survive in deserts, and Selaginella lepidophylla is one example. The question shows figure 4.1, which illustrates the plant after several months without water, looking brown on the left, and the same plant 3 days after rainfall, appearing green on the right. Now, let's dive into part B of the question. It explains that Selaginella lepidophylla is the scientific name for the plant, also known as resurrection moss. The first part asks, what is meant by the term species? We can say that a species is a group of organisms that can reproduce or mate with one another to produce fertile offspring. Moving to the next part, it asks, what is the scientific system used to name the species, and what's one advantage of using the scientific name instead of the common name? The system used is called the binomial system. An advantage of using the scientific name is that it's universal. Scientific names are the same all over the world, unlike common names, which can vary depending on the region or language. Plus, the genus name in a scientific name helps identify closely related species. Let's move on to the next question from another year. It mentions that organisms can be classified into groups based on shared features. In Part A, it states that fish are one of the primary groups of vertebrates. Your task is to list 3 key features used to classify an organism as a fish. That's simple. Fish are classified as vertebrates due to several defining characteristics. First, they have gills, which enable them to breathe underwater. Second, their bodies are covered in scales or it has scaly skin. Third, fish possess fins that assist with swimming and navigating through water. Additionally, fish are cold-blooded and reproduce by laying eggs without shells, which are surrounded by jelly and undergo external fertilization. These traits help set fish apart from other vertebrates, and selecting any 3 points from these will ensure full marks. The next part of the question asks, state 2 main groups of vertebrates other than fish. Now, when answering this, you have the flexibility to choose any 2 groups besides fish. For instance, I would go with mammals and birds. However, you could also consider reptiles and amphibians, or any other pair from these options. Now, let's look at part B of this question. It states that swordfish are large fish that live in the ocean and have a long, bony extension from their skull, called a sword. Figure 2.1 shows a diagram of a swordfish. The binomial name of the swordfish is Xiphias gladius. In the first part, you are asked to define the term species. Again, we'll simply write that a species is a group of organisms that can reproduce, breed, or mate to produce fertile offspring. Then, part 2 asks you to state the species name of the organism shown in figure 2.1. So, this is quite simple. As we know, in the binomial naming system, the second name represents the species. Therefore, the species of this swordfish is gladius. Here, we're revisiting the paper 1 questions, specifically the same multiple choice question from chapter 1, so we'll simply review it. The question asks about an organism that contains DNA within a cellular structure. Which group of organisms could it belong to, and which group could it not belong to? We know this organism could belong to bacteria, as the description matches, but it wouldn't belong to protocysts or viruses, as viruses don't have a cellular structure. Once again, we have a question we covered in chapter 1, but it's also connected to chapter 2 as it involves fungi. The question asks about the correct characteristics of fungi. Do fungi have long thread-like structures? Yes. Are chloroplasts absent in fungi? Yes. Are cell walls present? Yes. Does it have a nucleus surrounded by a membrane? Yes. Therefore, it's clear that option A is the correct answer because all these characteristics are found in fungi.